Thanks. Originally Rich was going to do this, and then he said, no, you should do this. So okay, I'll do this. But I wanted to go through a little bit of the things that have been going on in the last year plus of Clojure, because I think it's really, really exciting. Rich talked about all that, and there's just amazing stuff going on, and it's all of you doing things more so than me. But I wanted to highlight some of those things and get some of that stuff out there. So I want to cast your mind way back to long, long ago to like January of 2013. So, in January of 2013, none of these libraries existed. So it was only like a little over a year ago. But I'm going to guess that most of you are probably using one of these libraries. And this is not a complete list by any means. Like, there's no way I could possibly list all the libraries that come out in the last year. But there's just like all the prismatic libraries and core async and the test check, simple check stuff, and just tons of other things that are out there that did not exist a year ago. So I mean, I think it's clear that we are like rapidly evolving some really useful tools and that people are using to make real stuff. And in the tooling space, I think equally, the world is totally different now than it was a year ago as far as Clojure tooling. The IntelliJ Cursive plugin has come out, and it's fantastic. If you haven't tried it yet, that's a great. If you're looking for an IDE type solution for Clojure, it's great. The counterclockwise continues to advance, and they have a standalone version now, so it's a lot easier to get started with. Interruptible ELK became Cider. Vim Fireplace has really come into become the new Vim Vanguard for Clojure work. The Nightcode IDE came out. It's written in Clojure. It's a great place if you're just getting started. I think it's a fantastic beginner environment. Lighttable was open sourced and has just a huge active community of people building great plugins and doing all sorts of really interesting stuff. AVI is a VI sort of similar editor written in Clojure that's come out recently. The Gorilla REPL, I haven't even had a chance to play with yet, but is doing all sorts of interesting things. Clojure Refactor, and there's a bunch of other even libraries and tools that have come out. And none of those things existed a year ago. I mean, that's just in the last year. About a year ago, Clojure 1.5 came out, and that had reducers in it, and the new threading macros, and some of the Eden reader and Eden changes, and lots of other stuff. Clojure 1.6 came out a few hours ago, and so that's been released. Please switch to it. Woo! Yes. And I'm not going to go through all the things that are in that, but the highlights of that are that there's a new Java API for clawing into Clojure, destructuring of namespace keys and maps, some new sum functions that have not nil tests in them. We've done a huge overhaul of how hashing works with the goal to prevent some cases that could come up in the past, especially with collections of things. And so I think there's some specific cases you can fall into that are really bad, so that we've addressed those significantly, I think. And then there's tons of bug fixes and little improvements and things, and I don't have anywhere near enough time to go through all those, but go look at the changelog and look through all those. And I also want to include core async in this because it really started as something that originally was going to be part of Clojure 1.6, and Rich managed to design it in such a way that it did not need to be actually in Clojure itself, which meant that we could put it out there and people could immediately start using it with old Clojure releases or existing Clojure releases. And so I think that was absolutely the right thing to do, and rather than trying to include it in Clojure itself. And so I'm happy that got out there as a big piece of work. And I want to thank you. I know there are a lot of people in this room who contributed patches. These are all the people that have patches that ended up in 1.6. So thank you to everyone who has been submitting tickets and patches and all that sort of thing. And I want to call out special attention to Andy Fingerhut, who's right here. I kind of live in Jira and watch every change that goes into it or new ticket. Everything is, I'm watching all that stuff and continually trying to tweak all that and make it better. And that's my job. Andy also is doing that, and so just as a community member, and he really puts a ton of time into it and he catches a different set of things than I catch. And so I really thoroughly appreciate his help and everything he's done. So I wanted to make sure that got called out. There's also been a ton of new books that have come out. These are all books that have come out in the last, just in the last year. And I like that a lot of them are really focused on specific domains and not necessarily on like teaching syntax or something like that. We're getting more focused books now about different things. We also have some old classics that have new revisions coming out in the near future. And then there's some new books that are not out yet, but are on the way. So there's just a ton of books out there. I might be working on one myself. If you're a newbie sort of looking to get into Clojure, there are fantastic resources now that did not exist a year ago. And I'm going to mention some of them here, and I'm not mentioning some that already exist. So I was just trying to focus on the ones that are new in the last year or so. But Daniel Higginbotham has been working on Clojure for the Brave and True, which is available online, but also No Starch, I think, is going to publish that as a book if you would like to consume it in that form. Kyle Kingsbury, I'm not sure if he's in the room, but he's been at the conference, has been working on his Clojure from the Ground Up series, which I think is a great series for getting started. Karen Meyer has the Hitchhiker's Guide to Clojure, which is a little more tongue-in-cheek, but she's been working on that. And I don't have anything about her work with robots and things like that later on in the talk, but excuse me, she's been doing all this work with programming robots with Clojure and going and talking about it at places like OSCON and other conferences, and that's just a huge boon for us in terms of, as a community, in terms of spreading that knowledge in new domains and things like that. The Clojure koans were moved online into the ClojureScript koans, which it's just a really easy way to point somebody at this and to get a feel for some of those things. Exercism is a great site for programming exercises and getting feedback on them, and that's has Clojure support in it, as well as other languages. Stuart Halloway and Neil Ford put together a video series last year for O'Reilly, which is like 6 hours of material. So that's another great resource. Eric Norman, who's here, did a successful Kickstarter last year to produce a series of Intro to Clojure videos as part of Lispcast, and he has a new series on web development that just came out. Speaking of crowdfunded things, Ambrose Bonaire Sargent did a Indiegogo campaign last year for typed Clojure. He was trying to raise $20,000 so he could continue working on this. He actually raised $35,000, and that enabled him to do some stretch goals, one of which was supporting Nicola Mametto and some of the Clojure and Clojure ideas that he's been working on in Tools Analyzer and some of the things that Tim Baldridge talked about yesterday. We had a bunch of students in the Google Summer Code last year. I want to thank Daniel Solano Gomez, who's over here, and he's been working on it for a couple of years now, really helping facilitate all that work, and is continuing to do that this year, and so he deserves a great round of thanks for that. It's a great way to get students involved and to have some new kinds of work, new research type level work done in the Clojure community, and so that's great. The Lisp and Summer projects happened last year, and I don't think they've released the results yet, but at the point where they had announced or they provided some data after the first set of projects came in, and I think 35% of the projects were in Clojure. So clearly a lot of people were using that. I don't know if anybody participated in the Clojure Cup competition last year, but that was a really fun thing. That it was like a 48-hour competition to put together Clojure apps, and I really hope that they do it again this year. There are just some really neat things that people put together in a relatively short amount of time, and so it's fun to go look at those set of projects that got created pretty rapidly. We have a great and growing community. There are almost 9,000 people on the Clojure mailing list. There are about 50 user groups listed on the wiki page we have for this, and about over 60 that are out on Meetup, and I think a lot of those overlap. But the number of members in the meetup groups that are out there is more than 8,000. So clearly there are tens of thousands of Clojure developers out there working on things that are visible, and I assume more that are not quite as visible. But I'm really, if you don't have a user group near you, please consider starting one. If you have questions, please contact me and we'll help you with that. And it's a great way to meet people and learn. And if you want to teach other people, starting a Clojure bridge in your area would be a great way to do that. Bridget Hillier and all the other people who've been working on Clojure Bridge are doing a phenomenal job sort of bringing Clojure to more people and to new people. And seeing the first workshops in Durham and San Francisco sell out in just a day or two or whatever has been just awesome. And so I really am looking forward to seeing those everywhere and repeated and all those new people coming in. And I hope that a year from now, when we come back, that there's Clojure West has a ton of people who've been to Clojure Bridge and are here talking about it and that sort of thing. So, other people are starting to notice. ThoughtWorks does this technology radar every quarter, where they talk about new emerging technologies and whether you should adopt them or assess them and that sort of thing. And they've had Clojure solidly in the adopt spot for a while now, and so it's nice to see that up there. People, CTOs and people who are looking at technology look at this sort of thing. So it's important to get that out there. RedMonk has a language survey which compares GitHub projects and Stack Overflow questions, and you can see there's some correlation there, trying to get an idea for language popularity. Clojure was the biggest mover in the last survey that they put out. It had gone up 5 spots and was now in the top 20. And I kind of highlighted where it was there. There's kind of a grouping up there of older, fairly established languages. And then there's sort of a second tier there. And I think that that's where you see languages like Clojure and Scala and Erlang and Go. And I think it's, we continue to be a really, obviously in that sort of, that tier. And so people are obviously using it because it's out there, and you see that reflected in these numbers. There's been a number of important acquisitions that have happened in the last year. So Runa was acquired by Staples Innovation Lab, and obviously a lot of those people are here, and and they've continued to hire and do all sorts of great stuff. And it's important to see these kinds of things happen in the industry because Clojure is a high leverage tool, and so it's really awesome to see that leverage paying off for people and being a good example out there. Climate Corporation, I know there's a lot of people here from Climate, got acquired by Monsanto last year. That's another really noticeable one. And I wanted to mention that Relevance and Metadata Partners merged last year to become Cognitect, and that's where I work. And Metadata Partners is the company that had supported, or that Rich had created for Datomic. And one of the big benefits of this merger is that we had enough people involved that we could offer enterprise support for Clojure and Datomic and other things that are coming out of Cognitect. And so a lot of enterprises, that's an important checkbox out there of being able to buy support. So I'm really glad that that exists out there, and we can help out with it a little bit. There have been a number of, oh boy, I actually layered that over the top there. There have been a number of success stories out there that I wanted to talk about too. PuppetDB, I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but they are probably the most deployed Clojure app in the world. They have 40,000 installs and continue to rewrite more and more of their platform in Clojure. I'm going to have to drop out of here 1 second. I just dropped that in late, and I dropped it over the rest of the slide here. So Beanstalk has been having success pulling Clojure in. Roomkey has been growing with Clojure and talking about that publicly, which is great. The Mail Online is the Daily Mail's online website, and they've switched over to Clojure and have been pretty visible in talking about it. Prismatic, obviously, people have probably heard about Prismatic this week if you hadn't heard about it already, but they're doing a fantastic job building a company and platform on top of Clojure. So those are all just a sampling. I know there are a lot of other people in this room who have done other awesome things, and I can't possibly be comprehensive in all of them. So if I didn't include yours in there, I apologize for that. But there's too many people doing too many awesome things for me to track it all, which is great. And where are we going next? I don't know where we're going next. I can't wait to see a year from now where we are and what people have built, what tools people have built, and what's come out with Clojure, and where Clojure Bridge is going, and where the community is going. And I'm totally excited to see where that's going. So keep making awesome stuff is the summary of all that. And that's all I have.